Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Morgan Gabriel, Business Development Manager here at EA Technology. Welcome to this webinar in association with National Apprenticeship Week. Just a bit of early housekeeping. To avoid any interruptions, mics and cameras are disabled for the duration of the session. The webinar is scheduled to last for approximately 40 to 45 minutes. Please use the Q&A function in the top right-hand corner to ask any questions. At the end, our team will endeavour to get through as many of these questions as possible. Any questions our team do not get through will be answered and information will be sent out with links to this recording. Today's webinar will be hosted by Mike Parkhouse, Head of Training, and Kellyanne Stubbs, Apprenticeship Manager from EA Technology. So to start, let's put apprenticeships in the energy and utility sector into some context. So courtesy of Energy and Utility Skills Awarding Body, they've recently released their online job postings in apprenticeships in the energy and utility sector paper in January, giving everyone an insight into sector activity. So as you can see, there were 1,802 apprenticeship postings in the energy and utility sector in the year ending the 31st December 2024, which was 6% down on the number in 2023. Next slide, Mike. The region with the highest number of postings was in the Northwest. Next. And as you can see the breakdown, we can see that there's obviously some difference and disparity between different regions. Northwest at the top with a 36% increase. If you look at underneath Southeast, who are second in the number of postings in 2024, were actually 28% down. And obviously some of these statistics you'll be able to see yourselves in the paper. If you go to the next slide. And finally, just referring to the most sought after skills in this paper, sales prospecting in the utility sector came top, but if you look at the next four, high voltage overhead lines, electrical engineering, electrical power transmission, they're obviously four of the five top sector most sought after skills and are quite relevant to this webinar, which Mike and Kellyanne will be able to just talk further information through to you this afternoon. Over to you, Mike and Kellyanne.
Thanks, Morgan. So what exactly is an apprenticeship? An apprenticeship is a paid job with training, allowing individuals to work while studying for a qualification, which means that they can earn while they learn, gaining hands-on experience in their chosen field. Apprenticeships are available in a wide range of industries, including creative sectors, healthcare, IT, engineering, and many more. And they're open to anyone aged 16 and over, with different levels ranging from level 2 to level 7. One of the biggest advantages is that apprentices do not have to pay for their training, and the government and the employer pays the costs. Additionally, apprentices receive a salary starting at least the apprenticeship minimum wage, which increases as they gain more experience. Typically, apprentices spend 80% of their time working and 20% studying through a training provider or online learning. At the end of the apprenticeship, individuals will have both real-world experience and a recognised qualification, making it easier to secure full-time employment. Interestingly, 48% of new apprentices in the year of 2023 are aged 25 and over, reflecting a growing trend of adults using apprenticeships to upskill and change careers. It just highlights that apprenticeships are not just for school leavers, they are a viable pathway career for all people of all ages. Next slide, please, Mike. So the benefits of an apprenticeship will look from an employer. So firstly, it can offer a cost-effective way for their workforce development. They can receive financial support from the apprenticeship levy or government funding for smaller businesses, and apprentices can train to meet specific company requirements, ensuring that they align with their skills within the business operations. It can improve staff retention, loyalty, and career progression. Having apprentices in the workplace can help build long-term loyalty as individuals feel valued and invested in. And employers that are trained through an apprenticeship often stay longer and progress within the company, reducing recruitment costs. It's found that around 60% of apprentices continue to work for their employer after completing their training, so highlighting the effectiveness of apprenticeships in long-term employment relationships. So let's look at the benefits from an apprentice point of view. So they can earn while they learn, they get paid while training, unlike university students that can often take on a debt. Training costs are covered by the employer and the government. And apprentices earn industry recognised qualifications from level 2 to level 7. Many apprenticeships lead to professional accreditation in fields like engineering, accounting and healthcare. They gain hands-on experience and career progression, and apprentices receive real-world training, making them highly employable. And many apprentices have clear pathways and often lead to management roles. And it can give an apprentice job security and networking skills, which can help them secure future opportunities too. Next slide, please, Mike. So what is an apprenticeship standard? So an apprenticeship standard is a structured framework that defines the skills, knowledge and behaviours that an apprentice must develop for a specific role. And it ensures apprentices are work ready by the time that they complete their training. Previously, apprenticeships followed frameworks which were less structured and mainly qualification based, and the government replaced them with standards to ensure that apprentices gain real world skills that the employers need. They provide clearer assessment process and offer high quality learning experience. So the core components of an apprenticeship standard are the knowledge, which is the industry specific understandings requirements for the job, the skills, which are the practical abilities gained through training and experience, and the behaviours, which is the workplace conduct, professionalism and attitude. Next slide, please. So here we'll look at the apprenticeship levels. Referring to the slide, you can see that there's different apprenticeship levels. So level 2 is equivalent to 5 GCSE passes, so A star to C or numbers 9 to 4. The duration is typically 12 to 18 months. Level 3 is your equivalent to 2 A levels, the duration being 18 months to 24 months. Levels 4 and 5 is your foundation degree, HNC. It's typically 2 to 4 years. Level 6 is your bachelor's degree. The duration is 3 to 6 years, and level 7 is the master's degree, and the duration is normally 1 to 5 years. So deciding what level is right for you or your apprentice, we would advise, if they're new to the workforce, start out with levels 2 or 3. If they're looking for maybe a career advancement or development, we would suggest considering levels 4 or 5. And if they wanted a degree, we suggest that they apply for level 6 and 7. Next slide, please. So the apprenticeship levy was introduced in April 2017 to encourage businesses to invest in apprenticeships and develop a skilled workforce. It applies to large employers across all industries in the UK, and smaller businesses do not pay for the levy but can access government funding for apprenticeships also. Levy paying employers get a digital account called the Apprenticeship Service account, and they access their levy funds through. Employers can transfer up to 25% of their funds to other businesses to help them train apprentices. The small businesses that pay under £3 million payroll can get 95% of their apprenticeship training costs covered by the government. And even some businesses can receive free apprenticeships if they hire young apprentices aged 16 to 18. The apprenticeship levy is a key tool for boosting skills and training within the UK. While larger companies must contribute, businesses of all sizes can benefit from the apprenticeship funding. So making full use of the levy can help companies develop talent, reduce skills shortages, and create a more competitive workforce. Next slide, please. So the key roles in an apprenticeship. So an apprenticeship involves 4 key roles: the employer, who would hire the apprentice as a paid employee, and they will ensure that they receive practical on-the-job training. They will assign a mentor or a supervisor to guide the apprentice. The employers allow the apprentice to attend off-the-job training and support the apprentice in developing the skills and behaviours required for the apprenticeship standard. The training provider teaches the theatrical and technical knowledge required for the role and provides structured training, which can be delivered at a college, university, or training provider through online learning or workshops or practical demonstrations. And the training provider also ensures that the apprentice gains the required qualification, and they will track the progress and provide support throughout the programme. The apprentice themselves will work with the employer as an employee while developing their skills. They will balance work responsibilities with off-the-job training. They'll complete the coursework, the projects and the assessments whilst preparing for endpoint assessment and ensure that they develop the essential workplace knowledge, skills and behaviours. The endpoint assessment organisation assesses the apprentice at the end. They conduct the final assessment and ensure that the apprentice is competent. The EPA is independent and it evaluates the apprentice if they pass or fail, and then they award the final apprenticeship qualification. The success of any apprenticeship relies on all four of these roles in working together. Next slide, please. So the standard breakdown, it consists of training, which is a mix of theatrical and practical learning. The theatrical training can be classroom, online and textbook learning. The practical training is the hands-on skill development in training environments, and the placements on the job training is working in the real job role with the employer supervision. The EPA gateway is the lead up to the end of the programme, and it is agreed confirmation from all parties that the apprentice is ready to enter endpoint assessment. The endpoint assessment will assess through chosen components depending on what apprenticeship standard that they are on. Next slide, please. So the endpoint assessment, EPA, is the final evaluation an apprentice must pass to complete their apprenticeship and demonstrate competency in their role. It's conducted by an independent assessment organisation and ensures that the apprentice meets the industry standards set within the apprenticeship standard. The duration of this is typically between 3 and 6 months and at the end of the programme training. The EPA typically includes a combination of practical assessments, written exams, project work and professional discussion or interview. It is designed to assess the apprentice's knowledge, skills and behaviours gained throughout their training. And successfully passing the EPA is a national recognised apprenticeship qualification, proving that the apprentice is fully competent within their role. I'm going to hand you over to Mike now to go into a bit more detail about what apprenticeships we offer here at EA Technology.
Good afternoon, everybody. I was a bit previous there with the microphone. Welcome to the webinar that we're laying on today. Thank you for joining. It's really appreciated. Hopefully, it will clear up some of your questions or allay the fears that you may have in regards to getting apprenticeships delivered for your staff. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run through a few of the apprenticeships that we offer, and they're generally offered within the power engineering in the power industry. So the first one we'll look at is the electrical power networks engineer. So this is a level 4 apprenticeship. Typically, as it says, you've got to have 2 A levels, grade A to C in maths and a science, including English GCSE, grade AB, or an equivalent engineering qualification. So it could be the BTEC National Certificate, that sort of thing. So if your people don't have that, so if you're upskilling from a craftsperson, for instance, into an engineering role, what we can do to help you is put together a bridging module, and it generally brings up the level of maths up to the required level to join the engineer apprenticeship. So as I said, the engineer standard is the apprenticeship that is delivered for the various engineers that we have within the industry. So we've got the core KSBs, as Kellyanne mentioned earlier. So the knowledge, skills and behaviours are all requirements to be met, and it's then goes on to the back end of the apprenticeship standard, where they go to their pathways, where it could be any of the 6 that you're looking at the moment. So they could be asset management, planning, design, control, projects, or even an operational delivery engineer. So that's later in the program, where they actually go to the pathways and carry on from that. So the standard is the identified document that we need to follow to actually go through to complete the apprenticeship in its entirety. So if we look at a typical training plan, there is we tend to deliver a level 4 qualification. There is actually no mandatory requirement within this standard that we have to teach a qualification. However, most employers actually want us to put the level 4 qualification in because they still like to have that qualification certificate as part of the program. So the level 4 EAL level 4, it's a new qualification that we've just devised, which I'll talk about on the next slide, or the next couple of slides. So it's part of the program. So the program consists of the technical knowledge, if you like, or the theoretical knowledge at level 4. We also then go into modular or individual training courses or modules that build the overall program. So that depends on which pathway they're going to, what the voltage level is, for instance, within the industry, or within the job requirements of the individual. Plus they can do placements, they'll do internal company training, and they can do distance learning stuff, that sort of thing. So what we do is build that program to fit the individual as well as what's required within the standard. Okay, so the level 4, just touch on this very, very quickly. The level 4 diploma we put together over the last 18 months to 2 years, and it's really a qualification that it's the equivalent of a HNC. It's a level 4 diploma, and it is really what we devised was a qualification that would be more fit for purpose for the industry. So we worked with EAL and we devised this 2-year program, which falls into the so it could be a standalone, but it's also part of the apprenticeship program. So it goes through the typical units that you would see on a typical HNC. So you've got the maths, engineering, science, the health and safety. But where we separate slightly from the BTEC or the EdExcel qualification, we're actually built in electrical power principles. So rather than doing electrical and electronic principles, we do electrical power principles. So that takes into things like three-phase systems, understanding three-phase systems. We still do electrical and electronic understanding as part of the course, but we also go then into power quality, harmonics, and understanding different topologies, that sort of thing within the network. Year 2 then goes into the year 2 carries on then through understanding renewables. So it goes into understanding system analysis. We then go into the utilization. So that looks at cable design and where we basically use cables and the pros and cons of using different cables in different situations. We also look at power protection systems. So it's really built towards the T&D industry rather than the generic electrical qualification. What it also does, it helps us meet a lot of the requirements of the standard. So the standard, as I said previously, we taught the technical certificate. We then look at adding on, depending on what your requirements are, the individual modules. So these could be any of the ones that are listed, as you can see, the transformers, switchgear, cables, overhead lines. We could even add other units that you wanted, if you wanted to. So the idea behind this is when you build your program, so whether it's with us or with whichever provider that you go to, what you need to do is make sure that you build your program to fit what you need. So it's understanding what would be the end point or the end requirement for that individual. So what we do is we tend to work with that qualification. We then add in the modules. So we split between face-to-face modules. So that's classroom delivered modules. And then we also go into our self-study modules. So we've got a learning platform. So students, for instance, they could come, they could study the cables session with us. So they'll do 3 to 5 days on cables as a face-to-face study plan. And then they will also have a distance learning module they'll study, they'll take away, it's online, it can be mapped, so we can report back to employers to see how they're progressing and how much work they're actually sort of putting into how much time they're spending on the study. So that's just an example of the transformers basics. So we've got lots and lots of different modules that we can build in, again, tailored to what the requirements are of the customer. And this is what you should be looking at when you go to your learning provider, of tailoring it exactly to what you need. The other thing that we're working towards within our delivery options are, we're working with University of Central Lancashire at the moment to build virtual reality training. So as well as the face-to-face delivery, we will have self-study online, but they will also have, while they're in the training centre, we'll put them through the virtual reality training as well. So it just kind of gets them prepared for when they actually go to site and start to see the real world. We'll follow on then that with practical training, that sort of stuff, and we also do preparation for the endpoint assessment. So we will do mock sessions for the endpoint assessment, and it will turn into a program. If you can see it, I'm not sure, I can't see it very well because it's quite small on my screen, but what you can see in front of you is a typical program. We started this one in January, so it runs for a 3-year program. We start off with a foundation, so that's a 4.5 day session, that's a face-to-face. And then, as you can see, we then work through the sessions, and that's split between the qualifications and the modules that we've bolted on. And that could be 2 days of face-to-face training, 2 days of online training, and then it's estimated that they do another couple of days of study each month. So the idea is, what we need to do is meet a off-the-job training. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of that. You've got to do at least 20% off the job. So that is away from work, non-productive, and actually delivering, being delivered training or learning. So that allows us to then have that at least 4 days a month, so 1 day a week of study. So we've broken it up, so we do some face-to-face and some online, just to make it a little bit easier for employers to burden the cost, because obviously the levy fund does not cover your hotel travel, all that sort of stuff, or sorry, your apprentices hotel and travel. So we try to soften that by trying to give it various different options of delivery. Okay, so we work through that program. The minimum we've got to do it in is in a year. I'd be very surprised if we did a full EP&E program in a year, but it's got to be at least 1 year and 1 day. We generally go with 3 years, maybe 2 years, depending on the students and the group that we get. Okay, when we get towards the endpoint assessment, we then, in the final few months, we go through making sure that the students have got all their material together in their e-portfolio. So we have an electronic portfolio, so all the information that they gather, whether it be meetings, videos, all that sort of stuff, all the information they need for their, what would be an old paper portfolio system. You put it into an electronic portfolio system, and then what we do mock endpoint assessment interviews with the students to prepare them for when they go through the gateway, and then they do the EU IAS, so the endpoint assessment company, or sorry, agency, I'm not sure what you'd actually call them. They then take over and they do the endpoint assessment. So that's basically the sign off at the end of the program. Okay. So that's the the EPNE as a whole, so it goes through that training program. We tailor the training program, or you should get your learning provider to tailor the program to what you need. You then get to the point where you do your endpoint assessment, so you do your mock preparation, getting them ready, and then they go through the endpoint assessment gateway. Once they pass their endpoint assessment, they're then officially signed off as completed their apprenticeship program. One thing I didn't mention was what you will have to do, and there will have to be a commitment from the company that's putting the apprentice on the program. You will have to do 3 monthly, 12 weekly development or progress meetings, sorry, with a nomination from your company. So it would be a mentor for the apprentice, and somebody from the learning provider. So that's a 3-way conversation to ensure that they're still progressing and they're working towards their goals and they're not missing anything. It's really just a checkpoint to make sure that they're progressing on and they're not having any problems. Okay, so that's basically the apprenticeship as a whole. The other ones that we have, they're very similar in construction. So you would build from a qualification, build in the extra modules, and then you would get to the endpoint assessment in the same way. What I really wanted to sort of identify is the power industry craftsperson, what used to be called the power network craftsperson. The apprenticeships have now changed, so that these standards have now been split into 3. So what we actually have now is a level 3 apprenticeship. The requirements for this is actually no requirements. They've just got to be able to show that they demonstrate the ability to pick up the knowledge. What we can do is do some preparation if you needed to get them up to the level to start the program. Generally, it's getting them up to the right level of maths to be able to cope with starting the program and not being disadvantaged when they actually start the program. Typically, as with the other one, it's a 36-month program, and where we've changed it, or where it's actually been changed, not us, where the EUIS, where the apprenticeship standards have been changed, it's now split into 3 new standards. So where it was the Power Network Craftsperson standard for all craftspersons, there's now 3 different standards. So we've got our substation fitter. So where this has really sort of changed is we've got transmission and distribution, and we've also now got a construction fitter. So that is obviously much more suitable for construction, new works, new projects, installation, and that fits the criteria. So the KSBs that we talked about earlier, their KSBs will be slightly different to the transmission and distribution apprentices. But you'll still build your program to what you need at what voltage level, whatever it may be, to fit the program that you need. There is a distribution cable jointer, and then on the overhead lines, we've either got transmission or distribution in the same way that we had with the substation fitter. So they've all got slightly different KSBs, but it's understood to be a much better, a much more flexible option for putting your individual craftspersons through the program. So where this is slightly different, we've got the qualification. Again, there's no mandatory requirement to have a qualification in the program, yet most employers want to have some sort of qualification certificate linked to it. So the level 2, that is generally a qualification that we deliver or can be delivered. Generally, it takes about 5 weeks to deliver the program. Generally, that's delivered to the DNOs at the moment. National Grid deliver a level 3. So again, EAL, we worked with EAL to deliver or to develop a level 3 program. And that's really the difference between the level 2 and level 3 qualifications are the level 3 adds in a bit more on operations, understanding, being in charge. So kind of the person in charge running the task. But it's also, most notably, it's heavier on maths and engineering principles or engineering science. So there's a difference between those 2. The level 3 generally takes about 14 weeks of delivery. Okay, but it's really what you want to get out of the apprenticeship. The benefit of the level 3 is the apprentices can go from that level 3 straight onto a level 4 afterwards. They don't have to do any bridging between level 2 to level 4. They can go straight from level 3 to level 4. But that's by the by. So that's really what you would have that conversation with your learning provider to understand what your best option is. You then backfill that with modular individual training. You'll have internal company training, and you may have placements depending on your company size, that sort of stuff, and what you want to do with your apprentice. But in exactly the same way as I just talked about with the EPNE, you would build your program to suit what you need and to match what the standard KSB or the requirements of the standard are also. Okay. Just one quick one on the level 3 diploma. This is one that we've developed in recent years. There wasn't really a decent level 3 or a level 3 that was suitable. Me personally thought for the power industry. So we went to EAL. We used the standard maths, science, electrical principles, and the environmental health and safety. But then we built in 2 extra units. So they were specifically about understanding the network and being able to manage a project, if you like. So they would go through that, and just for the ones who were interested, you do things like you write risk assessments, method statements. They understand how switching programs work, all that sort of stuff. So it's that level more than the level 2. It gives them a little bit more understanding. It probably puts them closer to a person in charge sort of level or leader of a maintenance task. Okay, so the other thing is just sort of from EA's point of view, we've got lots and lots of different offerings. We've got both face-to-face, distance learning. We've got programs, whether that be for groups of learners or individuals. And obviously they all feed into that apprenticeship program. So we could build that apprenticeship program from all of those different offerings. So it would basically be a purpose fit for what your requirements would be. And also, if there's other things that you need, you can actually build those in as well. But the most important thing for me, I'd like for you to take away is the important part is for you to build that program that is fit for purpose. Don't sort of just take what you've been offered. Get the right program, because if you just do that work at the front end and get the right program, it will be so beneficial when the apprentices come out of the endpoint assessment, and they will be absolutely fantastic to hit the ground running when you start work. Okay, I think that's everything from me. Just one final thing. Obviously, all these things that you can do through the Levy Fund, but the apprentice, you could do it as a commercial offering as well. So I know we've got international potential customers. So it's really understanding that all these things can be funded in various different ways, whether that would be a commercial funding, but the package can still be, put together for you. Okay, thank you very much. I'll pass you on to, I think I'm going back to Morgan.
Many thanks, Mike and Kellyanne. Yes, brilliant. There's been quite a few questions that have come in. Actually, you've just answered pretty much one of them. And one of the questions that came in was, can programs similar to the apprenticeship be delivered outside of England and the English funding system? So I know you just touched on that. It may well be just to explain about if there's maybe a shortened version, or if you've got any examples of shortened type version of programs, Mike, of an apprenticeship type of program.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've done various different commercial programs. I mean, we've got one running at the moment, but it's a condensed 5-week program. But we've done lots and lots of different programs. It kind of sort of on the commercial side, you're not restricted at all by the standard, so you can be even more imaginative, if you like, with your program. But yes, whatever can be built.
Brilliant. A couple of other questions that have probably just come in that are similar. Is there an age limit to join the apprenticeship? Well, the age limit needs to be 16 and over for the apprenticeship. There's no upper age limit per se. Obviously, you'd want someone to be able to complete the apprenticeship. So if someone was retiring, you wouldn't put someone in an apprenticeship and they retire halfway in the apprenticeship. But there is no upper age limit, and we have seen within our sector that many people who are 50 plus have actually taken up an apprenticeship to actually move into a different part of the sector. So there's no upper age limit, but the lower age limit would be 16 as your starting age limit. Can people join the apprenticeship straight after university or college, or do they have to be employed? So that's sort of cutting across a couple of elements on that. So if someone's in employment, you can do an apprenticeship. So it will be the conversation between yourself and your employer about what is the most feasible and most comparable apprenticeship program that you would need in that role, and how to be upskilled. People coming out of university, college, or even school can join an apprenticeship program, whether they have an employer already lined up, or if you go to a training provider can also support you with some of their clients that they work with. So there's a variety of different ways to actually join an apprenticeship program. Another question Mike and Kellyanne we've had in. We are an SME. If we took an apprentice on over a couple of years, how would this work, or would we need to take on a number of apprentices at the same time?
Hi Morgan, yeah, we can take this one. So yes, it doesn't have to necessarily be a large cohort of apprentices. We do have a mixed cohort of apprentices that we do take on that are from different smaller SMEs, and we bundle them together to make a cohort, and actually it makes quite a good cohort, having the mix of different employers, just to get different elements and aspects of their internal processes and different ideas. So yes, we can take on smaller SMEs, and it doesn't have to be a large bundle of cohorts.
Brilliant. Another question that's come in: when researching the apprenticeship, the pay scale is labelled as competitive. Can you expand on this? So we will take it from baseline moving up. So the National Apprenticeship wage for 2024 is £6.40, and that's moving up to £7.55, and that's for the first year per hour, for the first year of an apprentice's journey. When we say competitive, everything's relevant. Obviously, the job role, that if you're taking someone on, what age they are, what sector, because obviously engineering, electrical, it's a wide range of roles. So I guess it's looking around at similar organisations like yourself to see also what they're advertising. So it can be not a finger in the wind, but the baseline will be £6.40 per hour for a 16 to 18 apprentice, or £7.55 from the 1st of April. So that would be the starting wages you'd be looking to bring an apprentice on. This one's probably directed to Mike, this next question which has come in. What typical roles and sectors does your level 4 qualification fit? So it's been a bit more directed to that EPNE qualification you were talking about.
So the EPNE, it would work for anybody working on the transmission and distribution network, private network operators. It's a case by case basis. So it would be a conversation to have where you work, what you do, because probably the best way to look at it is if you got hold of the standards, which is quite easy to do. You can go on the internet, you can go on the Institute for Apprenticeships and get the standards printed off. Look at the criteria within the KSBs and see, does that match what your job role entails, or the required job role entails? And that would get you quite close to whether it fits or not. But you know, we'd be happy to have a conversation with anybody if they wanted to you know, to clear those questions up.
Brilliant. Another question that's come in. If you already went through an apprenticeship route and gained qualifications in a different sector, can you still join an apprenticeship under the government levy? So there are restrictions on the funding. It's called the ESFA funding rules. When you are moving between sectors, it does open up a new funding route for yourself. So say if you are looking to come in from retail and you wanted to go into the engineering sector, then you may have done an apprenticeship in retail and you might want to move into engineering. Well, then that would be a different funding route. So you'll be able to fund another apprenticeship. When it does become more difficult is when it's looking at the levels that you've already attained. So if you're looking to attain another apprenticeship in a relevant sector, so within engineering or electric sector, so if you've got a level 4 and you want to do another level 4, there are restrictions depending on where you are moving within that sort of studying route. So all independent training providers will be able to advise you when you look at a certain qualification and look at your prior qualifications, what you've already attained. They'll be able to advise whether it would fall under the government funding stream or if it'd have to go under a commercial funded route. So it's having that conversation with your independent training provider. We've got another question, and this one might be for Mike and Kellyanne. What support would you advise an employer to put in place in the workplace to support the apprentices? So it's probably the practical elements.
I'll take this one if you like. As I said when I did my little spot earlier, the most important thing is building the right program, because if you build the right program, that should support the pathway and the learning pathway that they go through. From what we've experienced, the most important thing is having a dedicated mentor for the student, because that person will have the weight, if you like, within the company to make sure that the apprentice is supported, whichever placement or work area or job aspect that they're trying to sort of complete within their portfolio. It's so important to have that mentor that supports you and keeps you moving forward.
Brilliant. Excellent. And another question, maybe two parts to this one. How difficult is it to set up an apprenticeship program as an employer or a general training program? So, Kellyanne or Mike?
It's relatively straightforward. I mean, we work from, it's just about having that call, that understanding. Really, once you have that conversation with a learning provider, they can understand where you are, what your job role is, what's actually they're going to be the apprentice will be doing, and then it's just a case of working back through the KSBs, understanding what matches and what ticks off the criteria, if you like, of the KSBs, and then you just build that program. It's quite straightforward. We've probably got from our point of view, we've got a number of different options. It really depends on which standard you want and then which pathway you're going down, and then it's just have that conversation.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Mike. Well, we've just gone over time. So what we will do is many thanks for Mike and Kellyanne for all the information and hosting today's session. Any further questions that come in, we will endeavour to get some information out to yourselves with some answers. We'll also, when we send a link to the review of this webinar, we'll also put in the EU Skills January paper, so you'll be able to access that, which gives you the overview on the statistics of the apprenticeship postings for 2024, which I alluded to at the start of the webinar. And again, many thanks for joining this EA Technology webinar. This is the third webinar in a recent series. If you want to look at our other webinars, they are on our YouTube channel, and feel free to browse then. Many thanks.